And I am going to introduce Kathi Terami, who is our first speaker. So Kathy's with Careers CLiC. When Kathi was in middle school, she wanted to be a chef in a Chinese restaurant. While she was in high school, she wanted to be an interior decorator. She was a first-generation college student and graduated with a business degree from the University of Wisconsin, fully expecting to work in an advertising agency in a big city. She ended up in Tunbridge, Vermont, a town of about 1,200 people, and learned it's possible to make a living by working in a nonprofit organization. As the executive director of Careers CLiC, Kathi is part of a team that has connected resources from over 1,400 employers to 22,000 students and 715 teachers in 195 schools in New Hampshire and Vermont during the past 21 years, all to help the next generation prepare for life after high school. Thank you so much for being here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Kathi now.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to have 100 people here today. Before we get started, I have a couple of questions or things to point you out to. In the reminder message that Anna from VSAC sent yesterday, there was a link to some resources. If you happen to click on those and you have them handy on your device, that's great. You don't need them, but there were two things. One was a link to the Promising Pathways brochure. So it was a PDF of that. If you have that, great. Otherwise, I have some images of it that'll come up in a little bit. And the other was a list of career clusters. I printed it out in blue paper, but it was a white PDF. So if you have those, if you saw that link yesterday and you click on it, it might help you a little bit to have it right in front of you or on your device. But if you don't worry about it. I'll have images of everything that you can look at on screen. Okay. So thank you, VSAC, everyone here on the team for hosting this today. This is pretty exciting. And I want to find out a little bit more about where everyone's at. And I'm going to do a quick pop-up poll. And if adults and students can answer, I see there's some teachers and VSAC staff, so everyone feel comfortable going ahead and answering this poll. There's no right or wrong answer. This is just to get a pulse on where everyone is, and the poll responses are anonymous. So, and I guess if you're listening as a class, I saw that was happening, maybe ask for a show of hands in the class and then pick in the poll the one that is most popular in the response if you're listening as a whole group on one login. Okay, so Lindsay will pop up the poll. And what I want to know is if you know exactly what career you want to pursue someday. So adults too, think about this, but especially students. Do you have some ideas about what careers you might want to pursue, or do you have no idea what career you want to pursue? And remember, there's no right or wrong answer. This is just where you're at, and to help give me a pulse for how this is working for everybody. So, Lindsay, can you pop up that poll? There we go. So just pick one. So if you know exactly what you want to do someday, you might have an idea, or you have no idea. Looks like we have about half of you who have voted, and it's still climbing up. Okay, we'll give everybody 3 more seconds to click on your response, and then we'll close the poll. Okay, so it looks like we have 37% of you know exactly what you want to do. That's amazing. 55% of you have some idea about what you might want to do, and 7% of you have no idea. You're a blank slate. So there's going to be lots of great resources for you today. So just so you know, no matter where you are at on those responses, there are resources for all of you at any level of your career development where you're at. I'll share a few. And VSAC has a lot more, and I'll share some links for you. So no matter where you're at, we have something for you. Okay. So now, a lot of times people talk about success at some point in their lives. And today we're going to be talking about what will happen after high school. So if you're in middle school right now, this is thinking pretty far out into the future, but if you're in high school, probably doing a lot of thinking about what will happen after high school. So a lot of people think that success is like this straight path. This is what you want to be, here's what you need to do to get there, and that's what it will look like. But in reality, this is usually what ends up happening. There are a lot of twists and turns in our paths. And sometimes people think they want to be one thing, they might do a little bit to pursue that, and then they find something else that they want to be or do. So they take a twist in their path or make a turn. They might even go backwards a little bit and do something they did before that they stopped doing. So this is the reality of a lot of pathways to success and things that might happen in your future. And it's totally fine. So just keep this in mind. Now, there's even some data to back these paths. There was a 2019 US Bureau of Labor Statistics study that says the average person changes jobs 12 times over their lifetime. So there's actually data to validate this curvy path we have here. 12 times, that's a lot of times to make changes. They also asked on that survey why people changed jobs, and they talked about things like they sought higher pay, they wanted better benefits or job perks, maybe they were relocating, they wanted career advancement, they wanted to do something that's kind of higher than what they were doing before. Choose a less stressful job. Sometimes people find their jobs to be stressful and they want to do something that's less stressful. They might be changing their career focus entirely. They're looking for better work-life balance. There might be a reorganization at their company and their job's no longer available. They're looking for more interesting work, better work schedule. Skills and abilities that they have didn't fit their job, and they were looking for a better alignment between personal values and organizational priorities. So finding satisfaction in work and finding success in what you do after high school takes time and effort, and you can anticipate having a lot of changes along the way. Okay, so now I guess I have a question that you can use the chat to answer me. Have you ever heard the term career clusters? You can just do a quick yes or no in the chat. Okay, just so I can get an idea. And it's okay if you haven't, but we're going to talk about them a little bit and this will help me. Ooh, it looks like a real mix here. Okay, so VSAC for this Vermont Career Connect event actually used clusters to organize all of the resources for today. So you may have heard of it at this event for the first time, or you may have learned about it in school or just heard about it somewhere. Okay, thanks. So can anyone in a very short phrase answer in the chat what career clusters are if you have heard of them before and you know? It's okay if you guess. I just want to see if anyone out there can tell me what career clusters are. And if you can't, that's fine. And if it's an adult who wants to answer, that's okay too. We'll just see if anyone out there. Types of jobs. So what do you think the word cluster means? Based on job similarity and skills. Okay, similar careers with comparable training needed. Okay, these are some great answers. So career clusters are organized groups of similar occupations, and career clusters identify the knowledge, skills, and pathways for a range of careers. So you might have seen on VSAC's event website for Vermont Career Connect a list of career clusters with videos, video interviews. And those were all organized by career cluster because those occupations can be grouped because they have similar knowledge, skills, and pathways for those occupations. So we're going to be talking a little bit about career clusters today. And I'm going to start by giving you some examples. I'm going to give you two very different examples. Now there's 16. If you have that PDF that Anna shared yesterday, you'll see all 16 of them. I'll pop that screen up in a moment, but for now, I'm just going to give you two examples. So the first one is agriculture and natural resources. I'm going to just read to you quickly. Oops, got a little bit ahead. People who work in this area grow, harvest, sell, and manage food, wood, plants, and animal products. So that's the basic description of this career cluster. And now I want to see if in the chat you can guess some occupations or job titles. All right, Emily, you were fast. I didn't even finish with that request. So farmer, yes, absolutely. Just see if you can pop a few in other than farmer, and then I will bring up a list of examples. Okay, so some job examples of occupations within this cluster are farmer, agricultural scientist. I saw someone wrote that there. A nursery worker, that's not babies, although it could be baby plants. Forester, fisheries manager, botanist. These are examples of occupational titles within this career cluster. It's not an exhaustive list of every occupation, but it's a few to give you an example. So these jobs and occupations are clustered together. So here's a totally different one. So out of the 16 career clusters, we just did agriculture. Now we're going to do information technology. People who work in this area design, develop, support, and manage computers, devices, and apps. Many jobs incorporate IT on a daily task, even if that isn't necessarily your occupation. You're probably using something related to information technology. So can you, in the chat, give some examples of occupational titles, job titles that might fit within this cluster? Tech support, see if you can do a few more. Software developer. Okay, and now again, I'll give you a list of examples, not the whole list, but some examples. A computer programmer, someone who does coding, computer repair technician, computer network specialist, computer security analyst. That's a pretty hot growing field. Database manager, GIS specialist. Does anyone know what GIS stands for? You can type that in the chat if you do. It's a common acronym used in IT, but you may or may not know what it stands for. So it's a geographic information systems. Yes, there we go. We got it there. So that's actually what powers the maps on your phones. It does a lot of other things too, but probably most of you have used something that was created by a GIS specialist at some point. Okay, so here's a list of all 16 clusters, if you don't have that handout in front of you. So you can take a look at the labels for the 16 career clusters, and then I have a question for you. Just by reading this list, can you identify any clusters you might be interested in the chat? You could either write the name of the cluster or you could write the number. Oh, okay. So Robert, you said you did test. So let me see here. I do have a printout from VSAC's event website. There is a tab that says, I think it says career interest survey or career clusters survey. It looks like this. I printed it out yesterday. It's a few pages long. And I did one for me. Which was actually a pretty interesting activity because I work in the field of career development, but I don't always stop and assess my own career development. So I went through and I checked the boxes like the directions said. Actually, the directions say circle, but there are check boxes, so I checked them. And then I tallied them up. Now, this is one way to try to identify what your interests are. And what I found out is the cluster that I had the most check boxes in was cluster 14, marketing, sales, and service, which kind of made me chuckle because I have a marketing degree. I went to college for marketing. So I guess a couple decades later, that's still an interest area of mine. And I do happen to use it in my nonprofit work quite a bit. But I also noticed I had pretty high ratings in cluster 9, hospitality and tourism. That was interesting. Cluster 10, human services. That made sense given the work that I do, working with students and teachers. So this is one way that you can kind of find out what you're interested in. So you can go ahead and print this out or just open the PDF and mark it up and see where your interests might align with career clusters. But I don't know if he's listening to me. He's on a class Zoom downstairs, but my son, who's 14, he's a freshman in high school, he printed one out and did it. And as he was doing it last night, he said to me, well, this is interesting. What if one of these boxes I checked, I'm way more interested than another box that I checked? There might be more weight given to one of my interests than another. So he said, it might not just be adding up the check boxes, it might be how interested you are in each thing. So I thought that was pretty clever, a good thing to discover. So then he looked at the list of clusters and found that 2 of the ones he ranked the highest on when he filled out this survey were 2 that he felt he was most interested in, but 2 that he ranked high on, he wasn't all that interested in. But there were 2 on the clusters list that he was interested in that he did not rank high on. That might have all sounded kind of confusing, but in the end, some of the results of this matched what he thought his interests were, but not everything. So there's really different ways to look at that. So if you have a chance, anytime, click on that interest survey, download it, fill it out, see what you might be interested in. And I'm glad that some of you already have done that. So that's great. Okay, so I'm just going to give a really quick nod to skills. We're not going to talk a lot about skills today because we're going to talk more about career fields and options. But in addition to what you're interested in, it's really important in your career development on your path to success to think about skills that might be applicable to any job. So specific jobs have specific skill sets that you need to know to be good at those jobs and successful in those jobs, but there are some skills that educators and employers feel are important in almost any job. They're often called the 4 C's. Does anyone have a guess of what any of the C skill words might be? And I'll pop them up. You can type that right into the chat. Okay, give you a couple more seconds. C words. I'm seeing 2 of them so far. Oh, I think I just saw 3. Okay, so I see 3 of the 4 so far, but the 4th one is missing. So I saw communication many times. That was a popular response. Collaboration several times. I saw creativity, but the 4th one, I'll give you 3 more seconds. Can you think of another C word that might be a skill? Cooperation is actually within collaboration. It's another good C word. So this last one has to do with like solving problems. I don't want to use any of it's a 2-word phrase. Aha, great. So critical thinking. So that's the 4th one. Okay, good job over chat coming up with those. Now, we just talked about how specific jobs have specific skill sets that you need to be good at those jobs. But these are the 4 skills that are very commonly needed in almost any job in some capacity. Some jobs rely on these more than others. And each of these 4 C words actually have a lot of sub-skills. So we talked about collaboration. That might be things like teamwork, cooperation, cooperating with others. So there might be individual skills within those. So these are kind of groups of skills. And there are lots of ways to develop these skills when you're in school. A lot of these skills you're developing right in the classroom in school, but sometimes it's doing things that are hobbies. It doesn't necessarily need to be work experience that will give you these skills, although that can help. So one example I often like to use with students is if you like creating videos for a YouTube channel, all 4 of the C's are skills you can develop by being creative and coming up with your video content, solving problems like how do you do something? How do you get a certain feature to work in a video when you're editing? Communication, are you going to be narrating, speaking, writing a script? Collaborating, a lot of video projects are collaborative efforts with others if there's multiple people in your videos or helping you design it. So that's just an example of how one hobby or activity can help you develop all 4 of these skill sets. So be looking at that in places that you might be picking up those skills because they'll be really important to you all throughout your life. Okay, so we're gonna play a quick game. I don't know if any of you have ever played the Would You Rather game, but it's a fun game. You can play it anytime, anywhere, and you can even play it over Zoom. So Would You Rather is when you have a choice between two things, only two things, and you have to pick one of them, even if you don't want to do either of them. So you have to come up with which option you'd rather do over the other. So we're going to give you a couple of examples to warm you up. So Lindsay, if you can pop up the next poll of Would You Rather, we're going to give you two options and you need to pick one. So would you rather drink from a puddle in a parking lot or mow the lawn with your teeth? So Lindsay, pop the poll up so you can just click drink or mow. We'll give you a few seconds here. You have to pick one even if you don't want to do either. That's what makes this a game. Sometimes it's split 50-50 and sometimes there's a clear winner. So it looks like we have a lot more people so far. I think we'll close it up now. 79% who would rather drink from a puddle in a parking lot than mow the lawn with their teeth. And we didn't say how much of the lawn you had to mow or how much of the puddle you wanted to drink. So those details might have been important, but there you go. All right, so the next one. Would you rather cook a 4-course meal for a group of people, or would you rather clean up the kitchen after the meal? Give you a few seconds to answer the poll. Whew, okay. So we got to that one a little quicker. We'll go ahead and close it. So 77% of you would rather cook a meal for a group, and 23% would rather clean up after the meal. You need people to do both if you're going to have a meal, so that's important. All right, and now we'll do the next poll. Would you rather drive people somewhere in a car, or would you rather fix the car? Okay. All right, we can close the poll and share the results. It looks like 85% of you would rather drive people somewhere in a car, and 15% of you would rather fix the car. Okay, so now this is, we're gonna still talk about Would You Rather in a second here. So you know why we played that game, but good job everybody for being game contestants. The McClure Foundation and the Vermont Department of Labor, two organizations in Vermont that get together every 2 years and look at labor market information to find out what jobs pay the most in Vermont and which jobs have the most openings. And then they publish that in a brochure that's usually distributed to schools and available all across the state and all different places. It looks like this on the inside. So those are one of the images that I have there for you. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about this information. So on your career paths, you find out what your interests are and you work on developing skills. Those are two really important steps. But then you also have to start taking a look at what jobs are out there, what jobs are available, and what information about those jobs is important to you. And that may change at different stages of your life. But this resource that's published for youth and adults can help give you an idea of the most promising careers in Vermont. So you can look at this, and it changes every 2 years, the information changes, and you can see if there are any jobs that are high paying and have a lot of openings that fit your interests and your skills. So this brochure has 4 sections, and the sections are organized by something called Holland codes, which is another way to group careers that are similar, kind of like career clusters we talked about. And it's a little bit like a game of would you rather. Not totally, because you have a lot more options than just 2 things. But if you look at these groupings that are different colors, the first one says, do you like to observe, learn, analyze, and solve problems? Or do you like to work with people and use your creativity to guide or persuade? Those are 2 different groupings of careers. So sometimes people might say, oh gosh, like this is the type of thing I think I'd like to do for work. So I'm going to look at that grouping of careers, and then I can find out how many openings are projected over a 10-year period. That is the second column after the occupation title. And then what is the minimum education needed for entry? Is it a certificate, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree? Is it high school plus training? So you can look at those different education requirements, and then you can look at median wage. Before we move on, I just want to ask you if in the chat, can anyone define what median means, the word median? And if you can't, that's fine. So, okay, so we have middle. Okay, so it's not the average. They didn't take up all the wages that people get paid for that single occupation, add them together, and divide by the number of those to get the average. Instead, they're looking at the middle wage. So half of the people earn less and half of the people earn more. So it's important to know that these are median wages to look at, and they're divided up both by hourly and yearly. So you can see in that dark orange section, a computer support specialist, the median wage is $24 an hour or $49,000 a year. So that is something to consider. Now, people who have more skills and more experience are likely to earn more money above that median possibly, and people who are brand new to a field and don't have a lot of experience in it and maybe don't have as many skills in that field, they're likely to earn less. So that's one way to think about it too. The more experience, the more education and training, the more time you've spent in that field, you'll probably earn more. In general, there are some exceptions to that. So this is one way you can look at the information in this resource. I'm going to flip to the second part of it, which are 2 more groupings of occupations. Do you like working with your hands or with machines to make, fix, or build things? So thinking back to our would you rather game, fixing cars would definitely fit in this field. And something like diesel engine mechanics is a high demand, high paying job in Vermont. And then the teal grouping here is, are you organized and detail oriented? And do you like to work with lots of information? So that's what that grouping of jobs are. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes a lot of information, you could go to that link anytime you want at the bottom, at mcclurevermont.org and pathways, and you could get all sorts of information on these occupations, including more than are just listed here. And way at the bottom there, I don't know if you can see my arrow, VTLMI.info, that's Vermont Labor Market Information. The Vermont Department of Labor has enormous spreadsheets of labor market data, more than probably the average person would want to get into, but it's actually pretty interesting if there's an occupation you're interested in. And they have all sorts of great resources and things you can click on and do searches on occupations. So let's see if we can tie some of this together. So connecting your interests with opportunities that are right here in Vermont. And if you're from another state, I should say, every state has labor market information for the earnings, the education requirements, and the annual projected openings for jobs. So just look at your state Department of Labor and look for their labor market information. So every state has that information because the US Department of Labor makes sure that there's someone in every state capturing that information and publishing it for the public. So if you're not in Vermont, go check that out in your own state. So now, if you have that PDF in front of you that I linked, or you saw an occupation that you may already be interested in, type it in the chat. And I saw someone ask, can you have more than one? Yes, of course, you can be interested in as many occupations as you want. Keeping broad options open is actually a really good thing. So if there was something there you saw, I see lawyers, engineers, but now I'm going to pop something else up too. That is, you could also share position on the list that you're interested in learning more about. Sometimes if you just look through lists of occupations with information for them, you might see an occupation that you've never heard of before, or maybe you heard of it, but you never really thought about it. And wow, look, there's a lot of openings and it pays pretty well. So it might be something that you are just interested in learning more about, even if it wasn't already something you were interested in. And then this is kind of like okay, great. So I'm seeing all sorts of things being added here. Now, I'm just going to say a third thing. If you identify which cluster each job that, and I wrote circled on here, if you had it printed out, you could circle the ones you're interested in. If you identify what cluster, either a job you saw in the Promising Pathways brochure or a job you already came here today interested in that might not be on that list, once you identify what cluster it's in, you can find out all of the occupations that are related to that job in that same cluster. They, in general, have similar training and education and skill requirements. You might find an occupation related to one you're already interested in that you could become interested in. So that's another thing to do as a part of your exploration, is to kind of take a look at other things that are out there related to your interests. So you can see how many options are available to you. And then if you find a job that isn't in that brochure that you're interested in, you can go to the labor market information in your state and find that information. Now, if you're interested in a job that has 0 projected openings in your state, you may want to think about, okay, so this so if this is a state that you, or a job that you're really interested in, it might be something you need to take a look at other occupations that are related to it that do have openings. So it's just another piece of information that you gather while you're exploring careers, is what are the openings. And if you want to do a bunch of stuff like I just saw someone do, then that is, I think, great, because you keep your options open and you can pick different opportunities at different times as they come to you based on what's available and what path you're on. Okay, a few things about where to go for help for this. We already shared this resource and I showed you 2 links and talked a little bit about getting information on occupations, but sometimes you just need some help. You need someone to talk to about this. So the first section of resources I have is Ask an Expert. Now, if you're looking for help on your career path, you have some questions. Who do you think experts are? Is there anyone you've talked to or asked for information? Go ahead and type that in chat if you have an idea of an expert. Teacher, excellent. So definitely sometimes people who are really good at their job, that is such a good suggestion. So if you know someone who's really successful in a field that you're interested in, they are an expert. They are an excellent person to ask. A guidance counselor, a school counselor, absolutely. They have amazing access to resources on career information. So a parent, relatives, So this is all good. So you're on the right track. So parents, neighbors, and friends, they can be experts based on their own career experiences. And sometimes you can ask them, what was your favorite job? What was your least favorite job? And ask them why. And sometimes you'll find out someone's favorite job was someone else's least favorite job, because not everybody likes the same thing, and that's okay. So if you talk to multiple people, you can get a lot of experiences. School counselor, a lot of you said that. If you are in a high school and you have a work-based learning coordinator in your school, they may be called an internship coordinator, or they could be a flexible pathways coordinator. Someone like that would be great to talk to. If you are in a school that participates in a VSAC program and you have a Gear Up outreach counselor or a talent search outreach counselor, someone in your school like that, they can be an excellent resource too. I see there's a few on this call today. So find out what your resources are right in your own neighborhood, in your own home and families, and in your school. And then there's also Vermont Department of Labor career resource centers all over the state. If you just search that on the internet, you can find a map and a list of all of those, and you can go and access all the resources they have. So that's also another great resource. And you can explore on your own. So you can talk to people, but you can also just explore on your own. VSAC has some great resources on their website. We talked about the Vermont labor market information. mynextmove.org and myskillsmyfuture.org are two national resources that have great ways to search. You can search by skill, you can search by occupation, you can search by interests, and you can get all sorts of information on jobs available nationally. Oh, and I should have mentioned earlier, let's do this as a guess. Can anyone guess how many occupations there are? Occupational titles that are actually classified by the US Department of Labor. So the number of occupations that would fit into those 16 career clusters. So there's more than 16, and there's actually a lot more. So we'll give you, whoa, okay, loads, yep. We have 100,000, 45, 65, 10,000, over 500. So we got lots of good guesses here. So the number changes a little bit every year because there are different occupations added and some occupations that become obsolete, but there's about 600 different occupations. And here in Vermont, over 500 of those occupations are active. So sometimes people feel like there might not be a lot of jobs around here. There actually are. There's a lot of occupations, but there might be some occupations that aren't in Vermont because we just don't have that industry here, or maybe we don't have that geography here, like we don't have an ocean. So there aren't jobs that have to do with the ocean here in Vermont, although there are actually a few, like college professors who teach marine biology and things like that. So it's good to know that there's a lot of occupations out there, and you are at a point in your life where you can check any of them out that you want. So what's next? Anna and Lindsay, let's see how we're doing on time. We've got a little bit of time left, but I thought it would, well, actually, before we do this, we could find out if anyone has questions about the information that I just went over. So we could do that, and then we could talk about what's next. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about career clusters, accessing these resources, the promising careers in Vermont, the 4 Cs. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them in the chat. And Kendra, undertaker is absolutely an occupation. I don't know if it's on the list of career occupations in that brochure, but you could look it up in Vermont labor market information. So I'll give you a few seconds if anyone has a question about anything we just talked about. Otherwise, we can move on to what's coming up next. Okay, and as we're talking about the next things, if you have questions that come up, you can still put them in the chat and we'll try to catch them. What is the best way to find out what a career pathway looks like? Like how to find which college to go to. So Elena, if I'm not sure what grade you're in, But if you are in a high school, I recommend checking in your school counselor or your work-based learning coordinator to get some personal help on that, to find out a career path you're interested in and what the training requirements are. But all of these resources here in the Explore Your Own section have information on career paths. And I don't know if it's a little preliminary to say this, but there's an organization in Vermont that actually is housed at VSAC called Advance Vermont. And they are in the process of launching a resource for Vermonters, youth and adults, that can explore career paths and find out what the educational options are right here in Vermont. So that will be something that will be available soon. But all of the information in general is available. And I would check in with a school counselor or work-based learning coordinator to help point that out to you, or Gear Up outreach counselor or talent search counselor. Okay, so for talking about what's coming up next, and VSAC staff who are involved in organizing this, please chime in. I have explored the Vermont Career Connect event website thoroughly. I have gone through videos in all 16 of the clusters. Have any of you watched any of the videos that are there? So I don't know. Okay, so I see Anita says yes. So check out to see those career videos that are there after this event today, if you haven't watched them. But if you have, you know that there's some pretty awesome career interviews that you can watch of people in Vermont and all over. I watched some from North Carolina and Washington State. I think there were some from New York. So you can take a look at all sorts of different occupational videos. And then right after this session ends, you're going to get hooked up with your breakout career panel where you can actually ask some questions of people who were in those videos. And now I put a bullet on here saying ask questions. The purpose of these is Q&A. So please be sure to not be shy and go ahead and ask questions. And you can do that right in the chat. So this is your chance to ask questions about specific occupations to people who actually work in and have a lot of experience in those. And I know that VSAC only was able to give everyone access to one live panel, but I believe they're all going to be recorded. And so if there's another career cluster or group of careers you wanted to see in a panel but couldn't sign up for, I think you'll be able to watch those after so that you can check out and hear the questions and answers that happened in panels that you missed. And don't forget about that career cluster survey that I mentioned earlier. You can go and download that to find out. And then there's one more thing that I saw on that event website. There is a tab you can click on for resources. So there's lots of great resources there. But there's also a reflection activity where you can kind of go and get an idea of how all of the resources tie into your own career exploration and your own career path. I haven't filled that out yet, but I guess I'll try doing that after the career panels. So it gives you a chance to identify your interests, identify the clusters you're interested in, identify some information about careers that you're interested in, and then reflect on how you're going to work through that path. So this would be a great way that you can reflect on all the resources that are here today. So if you haven't already, take a look at that event website, watch some of those videos after today's panel. And then once VSAC posts them, you can watch recordings of the panels that all took place today, other than the one that you were in live. Okay, so it looks like people might have some questions about the breakouts. So I don't know if Anna or Lindsay or anyone else who's working on the panels, if you wanted to chime in to help answer some of these. I think in a few minutes, they are going to start dividing everyone up into the panels that they signed up for. But if you have any specific questions about how to do that, I know they left a few minutes to answer those questions and figure those out right at 11 o'clock. So you can go ahead and put those questions you might have in the chat and we'll see if we can get them answered.
Yes, folks are busy in the background getting you set to go into your breakout rooms. You'll have lots of time. Well, you'll have time in those breakout rooms to hear from a smaller group of people in these fields, and they'll be able to ask questions then. So this is a chance to ask Kathi, who's just done this presentation, some sort of broader and bigger questions about how you get started and where you're going. And maybe we can ask about all her careers. I don't know.
So I think if there aren't any other questions right now, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break to finish getting everybody into your breakout rooms. So everybody just be back by 11:10, and we'll be putting you into your breakout rooms within the next few minutes, but feel free to keep typing questions in the chat in the meantime if you have any. And thank you so much, Kathi.
Yeah, you're welcome. This was great. Thanks everyone for being here on your Wednesday morning. It was fun chatting with you.